Alright, so this is my behavior management presentation. So my first philosophical belief is consistency. I am huge on being clear with your expectations and starting off any type of lesson, activity with your expectations, and then consequences so students know what to expect when they do have poor behavior. It just avoids confusion, and better behavior will result when the students have a consistent procedure that is implemented when the behavior is good or bad. My second belief is keeping a positive atmosphere. I want my students to come to my classroom and be ready to learn, and they want to be there. If they enjoy learning, they'll get more of what I can teach them. And praising good performance, the phrase catch them being good more than being bad. Not that you're ignoring the poor behavior, but really promoting positive behavior so then they'll just be more motivated overall to be there and just be happy to be in the classroom, because school kind of gets a vibe of, oh, I don't like school, I don't want to be at school. I want my students to be at school and to enjoy being in my classroom. And even if it is something bad, if you catch them doing a mistake or poor behavior, point out something good first before talking about the mistake. It just kind of leads in a better positive vibe, and the students will receive that a little bit better. My third one is to know your students. Recognize each student and acknowledge and appreciate them. Greet them. Some are there at, some you will be the first good morning that they get because they go to daycare right away in the morning. Mom and dad just don't have time. So they won't get a good morning maybe until you say it to them. Display their work. They will take more pride in their work if you take pride in displaying it. So if you show that you enjoy showing off your students' work, they're going to take more pride in the work they do, and then in the future work that they do for you too. Verbally cite accomplishments for better motivation. Send a note home to the parents, or a phone call home. Most will probably think that it's a negative phone call, but when you take the time out of your day to praise their child, it will be greatly received by the parents. And give your students a pat on the back or a hug when it's appropriate, and a nice smile too. Number 4 is be flexible to behavior situations. I'm huge on being flexible, just overall as a teacher, but in behavior situations, it's really appropriate because when you have a relationship with them, you'll be able to better understand where the misbehaviors may be coming from, because each student is different. Each comes from a different home background, ethnic background. There just might be something off about each student, and it's not going to be cookie cutter. But don't whine to your students. You need to still be a professional in this area, but if you offer choices, that is also something I'm huge on. Either discontinue the behavior or there will be a consequence, and if you've already laid out your expectations and consequences, the student should already know this, and hopefully that will already dilute the behavior as well. And just giving nonverbal cues, just a quick motion in the hands or shaking head or doing this. Don't feed into their behavior because most likely they're probably looking for attention, and just make it quick, done, over with, and move on. So for classroom setup, with routines, establish consistent routines, especially for the first month of school. It's going to feel kind of like drill school, but if you will have to give them repetitive reminders of routines and procedures and expectations, and just having a higher efficiency. Anticipate the boundaries that might be problematic, especially around the teacher's desk, just because I know students probably like to go and mess with the teacher's things, so I will be prepared for that, especially as cabinets that hold supplies that might not be necessarily safe if they're more chemicals for science projects. So just have maybe a rule of waiting for specific permission and student desks, and make sure they know that their desk is their property and that's only their responsibility. They don't need to worry about others' property or getting in other people's ways. Rewards. Rewards are intended to add incentive. However, I do not believe in them at all. I've seen the personal negative experience with them. I've seen them at my own work over the summer with a daycare program that I am a part of. It's ineffective. It lasts maybe a week, and then the students get used to it, and the students don't even do it for learning. They do it for the prize. And I think for me, the only tangible incentive that I would give out is a sticker for good work, just knowing that I appreciate them. But I'm a huge believer that all motivation needs to be intrinsic and done to learn and actually gain that knowledge and remember that knowledge versus doing it for the sake of like a pizza or ice cream party. So rules and consequences. The first day of school, I plan on sitting with my class and making a list of negotiated rules. They'll be more likely to follow them if they have their own input and it's more in a democratic setting. And I feel like I would like to have each of my students go home or do this in the classroom, but write out the rules and then have their parents sign it and then bring it back to class. So I know that there is an agreement and a connection between my classroom and in the home. So the parents know and I know. And I think it'll just be more thorough and effective that way. And I plan on posting rules on around the classroom as usual in other classrooms. And one of my things is rules need to be displayed in a positive manner. I feel so many students hear no, don't, stop all the time. And I think if we reword some rules, they might be more likely to follow them. It's like, for example, saying walking feet instead of no running. Because the first word they're going to hear is no. And they're already not going to follow it. And then they hear running, so then they're more likely to run. All right, so some teachers may have management skills that are not agreeable. I've seen this in some of my own field experience where I've watched my teachers and I don't agree with what they're doing, and that's okay because that's a learning experience and I've already been learning that and I'll probably learn a ton more when I'm actually in my own classroom. But I want to have a clear hierarchy of consequences. So I plan to be consistent and share the system with my students because if you don't share it with them, there's no point in having a hierarchy because they're not going to know until they're actually having poor behavior. So for me, my first offense is going to be a warning. My second offense is maybe take a break, which is seen more in elementary classrooms. I'm not going to have them go out in the hall because then they're going to be missing out on their learning. But maybe have a chair in the back of the class where I can just say take a break, and then they can go to the chair and sit, and when they're ready to come back, however long that may be, maybe 30 seconds, maybe 5 minutes, but it's on their time and they can come back and be ready to learn. Third offense would be one-on-one conversation with myself and a potential call or note home, depending on the behavior that is given. And the fourth offense would be an action with office or the counselor. And the fifth would be a meeting with myself, the parents, and an administrator about further actions we can take to help improve the student's behavior. And the arrangement of my room, the first day of school, I plan to give my students a tour of the room, and I am a huge believer in the classroom belongs to my students just as much as it belongs to myself. And maybe even have my students help set up their classroom because that makes it even more of their property as well. And I want to share boundaries and guidelines for specific areas that may be problematic, like I said before, the teacher's desk, the cabinets, and asking for permission first. I want to keep my room versatile so changes can be made if I need to make space for work, or if there's a student conflict, I can move students around to help dilute behavior again. Or if it's just there's high traffic areas and it just doesn't work, then I can be flexible to change that. And I plan to keep my desk at the back or the side of the room. I don't want to be in the front of the room. Just personally, I don't want to be the center of attention. When I'm up there teaching, that's totally fine. But I want my workspace to be out of the way, either to the side or in the back, so I can still watch my students no matter where I sit. So this is the desk setup that I've liked so far. I like the idea of stadium seating because if you have students in rows, some of them might be facing like a bulletin board or a poster, and they're not necessarily facing towards the whiteboard. This way they can all be directed at the whiteboard, blackboard, smartboard, whatever it'll be. So and then they're just more bound to be looking up front, which is where I'll be teaching. And I also like the idea of having desks grouped together for collaborative learning and social learning, but I would have them adjacent like this to the front of the room, so we wouldn't have students that would have to turn around physically, but they could turn their head to look at the front of the board. So that is my classroom setup and my philosophy. It's the end of the presentation.